So, my aunt stole my fiancé for her daughter, and now everyone is crying because I took away the trust fund and they realized that my ex was just a lazy guy. I'm 28 years old and I was engaged to Ron, who is 27, for a year. We met in college and were friends, but not very close. After we graduated, we started dating, and we were together for 4 years. Last year, we got engaged and had a small ceremony with close family and friends. My aunt was also invited, and from the moment she attended, she was completely taken by my ex. She couldn't stop complimenting how handsome and rich he was. It was unusual, because she had never been so affectionate with me. Her daughter, Lucia, who is 24, is extremely beautiful but as dumb as a rock. My aunt always compared us in every way. I was good at my studies, even though she was 4 years younger than me. In school, my aunt compared our grades and would comment on how her daughter was better than me. The worst part was when she compared Lucia's report card from 8th grade to mine from 12th grade and said that she was better than me. The funny part is that Lucia couldn't even graduate high school. Ron and I were planning our wedding for October, but I had to go to the UK for a summer program. Everything seemed fine between us when I left in June, and we would talk once a day due to the time difference. But 2 weeks after I started the program, we started drifting apart. I asked him what was wrong, but he didn't say much, just that he was stressed with work. I thought the distance was affecting our feelings, but I didn't take it seriously because it wasn't a new relationship. I planned to fix it after I returned. However, a week before my program ended, he stopped talking to me completely. I felt so childish. I wanted to fix things, but he chose the easy way out and disappeared. I've always had a lot of pride, and even though it hurt, I didn't chase after him. I stayed in my fantasy world, thinking that maybe he would come after me, but he didn't. Instead, my aunt showed up at my house with an invitation to her wedding. Found out she was getting married to my cousin Lucia. What the hell? In the age of emails, she shows up with a printed invitation, probably just to see my reaction in person. It was one of the few times I felt completely stunned. I was in shock, asking myself, how could he fall in love with my cousin, who can barely afford her meals? My aunt soon answered that question. I'm so sorry, darling. I understand your pain, but what can we do when people fall out of love? Maybe he couldn't handle the distance. Don't be mad at Lucia. Ron was the one who reached out to her for a coffee because he didn't have anything else to do after work. You know how beautiful my princess is. You can't blame Ron for falling in love with her. I looked at her with red, tear-filled eyes. Normally, I can't tolerate my aunt, and I would interrupt her. But this time, I was so shocked I couldn't say a word. I just stared at her and took in her cruel and sweet insults. She said, "Believe me, darling, I love you as much as I love Lucia." I screamed when she told me about Ron, but he came down to my house and confessed his deep love for Lucia. You know how humble and sweet he is. My heart melted instantly when he knelt down and asked for Lucia's hand in marriage like an old-school gentleman. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I imagined Ron doing everything she described. He tried to hug me, but I blocked him. I wiped my tears and composed myself, telling her I had something to take care of and to please leave. She told me, "If you're thinking of contacting Ron, don't. I'll block you. It's not proper for my son-in-law to be in contact with his ex." I told her to go screw herself and her son-in-law. I have too much to do in life than to chase after someone else's man. She got up and said, "Don't get discouraged, my love. I know it will be hard for you to find another man at your age, with your looks, but don't worry. There are plenty of divorced men looking for a second chance at love. I'm sure you'll find a man just as good." I shouted at her to leave. Regretted losing my composure and giving her the satisfaction of seeing my vulnerability. But it's okay. We all have weak moments in life when we simply can't hold it together. This news was more painful than the breakup with Ron. I'm not saying it would have been easier if he had cheated with another woman, but it would have been better than this. I would have cut ties and made sure I never saw him again. But now, who knows? My aunt could show up at any moment to rub her daughter's prize in my face. Everyone, friends and family, knew about Ron and me. Now I feel so stupid for having such a big engagement party. Now that he's marrying Lucia, the story is clear to everyone. My aunt has been spinning a different tale, saying Ron found comfort in Lucia because I was too stubborn and self-centered, and I prioritized not going to the summer program in the UK. But I still went and stopped talking to him. She even said that Ron suspected I was involved with someone in the UK, that he heard a guy's voice in the background every time he called me, and things like that. I haven't been in touch with most of my relatives since I moved out of the house. Even as a teenager, I was distant from them because I didn't like their trivial conversations. So it was easier for my aunt to sell her lies. Feels so terrible. I know that, in the end, this will be for the best. I've gotten rid of the cheater. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But you know, when you're in the middle of the darkness, it's simply impossible to navigate through it. Even if you know everything will be okay eventually. Update 1. Hello, and thank you for all the encouragement on my original post. I've been thinking about updating this for a while, and I thought I'd do it the day I no longer felt anything for my ex. Well, here we are today. In fact, things have improved, and there's even a cherry on top. That phase was really dark and long. It's not that I haven't gone through a breakup before, but this one was horrible because he was my fiancé. My mom came by last week, and it really helped having her by my side. However, I felt sick when she left. I was with Ron for so many years, and every place reminded me of him, so I decided to leave the city. I applied for jobs in the UK and got a promising one in Leeds. I packed up and left. My advice to anyone struggling to move on after a difficult past: nothing heals better or faster than a change of scenery. Of course, only if your situation allows it. I know not everyone has the opportunity to move so easily. Anyway, moving to the UK made me feel like I was reborn. I was surprised at how quickly I managed to overcome it. Things took a turn for the better. A few days ago, my mom called and asked me if Ron was unemployed. I told her yes, he was, not unemployed exactly, but he quit his job a year ago to pursue his passion for writing. Here's something interesting. Ron wanted to be a writer. He wrote here and there, but didn't make much progress with his full-time job. So I decided to help him build a career in writing. We had an agreement where I would work full-time while he laid the foundation to start his own business, and eventually, I would leave my job so that both of us could focus on our own business. But then it all went wrong. My mom laughed so much when I told her these details. She said that my aunt had come to see her the other day and shouted, "Why didn't you tell me Ron was a bum?" My mom was confused because, as far as she knew, he was working and doing fine financially. My mom said she had no idea about this. My aunt told her that Ron kept insisting Lucia should take an accelerated course that would get her a better-paying job so that she could cover the household expenses for both of them. He wanted to implement this plan with Lucia, but what he didn't know was that my aunt had married Lucia off to him so they could both live off his income. Well, the jokes were between them. The last I heard, Lucia was working part-time as a receptionist at a restaurant, taking table reservations. I'm not sure if both of them could survive on the salary of a receptionist. Maybe it sounds judgmental looking down on Lucia's profession, but maybe yes, maybe not. I don't care. I would love to see the disappointment and anguish on my aunt's face when the truth about Ron comes out. There's another layer to this. My aunt was the mistress of my dad's father, and when he died, his legal wife kicked her out of the house. That's why my aunt lived with my grandparents. They were living off my grandparents' pension, and sometimes my dad and uncle would help them financially. Lucia has always been a silly girl. She doesn't like to work and isn't capable of. She failed twice in high school and eventually dropped out. The receptionist job she got was also thanks to my uncle. He recommended her to a restaurant owned by one of his friends. Nowadays, even a receptionist job requires a high school diploma. If you think poetic justice has been served, not yet. After I finished lamenting, it was time to act. He was still at his job. Together, we bought a trust fund that we would use later for our business. He had full access to the trust fund because he was handling our finances. He was putting money in it every month. I'd say 20% of that money in the trust fund was his. He emptied the whole fund when I found out about his infidelity. He has no idea that the fund no longer exists. He's still delusional, thinking he will get the money from there because he told Lucia that once my anger calms down, he would contact me and get his 50% of the trust fund. Delusional. If you think I'm a scammer, well, I'm not, because I spent an equivalent amount of money on Ron during his bad times. After he quit his full-time job, it was very hard for him to get writing jobs. It was difficult for him to make ends meet, so I gave him access to one of my surplus accounts where I was saving some money for his monthly expenses. I supported him with all my means. I think what I did is fair. If we had been married, he would have received alimony. That trust fund was the closest thing to that because we were almost married. Now I wonder about his future plans for his business. He has no savings and no job. That's no longer my problem. Update 2. Here's the next update. This Christmas has been delightful. I had the satisfaction of seeing the disappointment on my ex's face. I went back to my mom's house and he came to knock on my door. He was here asking for the money from his trust fund and also demanding 50% of it. I said, "What money?" He said he had saved money in the trust fund that we were going to use for our business. I said, "Oh, that trust fund? I liquidated it." He went crazy. "How could you do that? We had saved that money for our business. Now what are we going to do?" I said, "Excuse me, there is no we. You're my cousin's husband, and the person you should call is on the other side of the street." He took a deep breath and said, "Look, I know I hurt you, and you have every right to be angry with me, but I need that money from the trust fund. I don't have a job. The client I was writing for dropped me. I'm looking for another client. Lucia doesn't earn enough for both of us. I haven't paid rent in the last 2 months, and if I fall behind one more month, the landlord threatened to kick me out. Please understand my situation." I shouted, "Why the hell should I understand your cheating ass? Remember what you did to me." He said, "Your money only made up 20% of the trust fund." I replied, "Well, whatever. I want it back." He said, "Remember the money I gave you for your monthly expenses? What about that?" I told him, "I took your 20% from the trust fund to recover some of that." He calmed down a bit and said, "I spent that money when you were my girlfriend, so you shouldn't complain." I countered, "By that logic, you gave me the money from the trust fund when you were my boyfriend, so you shouldn't ask for it back either." He threatened to sue me for taking his share. I told him that if he did, I'd also press charges for credit card theft because he used my debit card to withdraw money for his monthly expenses. I reminded him that if we calculated who owed whom, he could end up in debt. It's better for him to keep an eye on his situation and accept the truth. He left angrily, with a bitter look on his face. If this meeting wasn't enough, my aunt and Lucia showed up at my parents' house looking for me. They were here to ask about the money from the trust fund. Ron had told them I took his share of the money, and now he had nothing. He was ruined. I told them it was none of their business and that I wouldn't discuss my matters with them. Lucia kept bothering me, asking me to explain because her future was at stake. I said, "This concept is beyond your comprehension, so it's best if you stay away from it." My aunt screamed at me for insulting Lucia and said I should lower my ego when talking to her because Lucia is more successful than I am. She claimed Ron left me for her. My dad came into my room when he heard my aunt's voice. She melted when she saw him. She said she was just casually talking to me about her distress. My dad said he heard everything, and if she dared raise her voice against me again, he would cut off all financial support he had been giving her. He said he regretted not intervening earlier in my affairs, as he had allowed my aunt to humiliate me, but that would stop now. He told her that if Lucia was so successful, then she should help Ron manage the house and save them from being evicted. Apparently, my aunt and Lucia didn't know about Ron's poor financial condition or the unpaid rent. They were shocked. Lucia started sobbing in front of my dad, saying that Ron had ruined her life because he couldn't support her. She was worried about where they would live if the landlord really kicked them out. She asked if my dad could release Ron's share of the trust fund so they could rebuild their life. My dad said he was proud of me for defending myself and laughed at my aunt for going behind my back to seduce Ron for Lucia. He said Lucia should have thought of the consequences before prostituting her daughter. My aunt started crying, saying she did everything to secure her daughter's future. My aunt changes her tune quickly depending on the situation. She said Lucia didn't have a father to back her like I do, nor was she educated like I am to make money on her own, so she had to rely on her. She thought Ron was the one who could take care of her daughter. But look, the poor fool betrayed her. Lucia interrupted and said that my aunt should have told me that Ron was unemployed, but she let her cousin marry a lazy man. She didn't blame me for this, though. She said I had my reasons for hiding the truth. My dad stood up and told them to leave. He said that they had turned their backs on me to seduce my fiancé, and then came to my house to rub it in my face that their daughter was marrying my fiancé. It was her now. Now that everything was falling apart, she was blaming me for hiding the truth about Ron. Before they left, I told them not to worry about Lucia. There's plenty of sugar daddies waiting to shower their love on girls like her. I'm sure they can both find one. That was pretty harsh of me, but I'm not such a good person, and frankly, I don't care. She started the humiliation when she came to tell me about her daughter's wedding. I wish I had recorded it when she called Ron a bum. He deserved to know what his mother-in-law and wife really thought of him. However, if she could call him that in front of us, she could do it to his face too. Update 3. Ron sent me an email admitting that he had messed things up. He had borrowed money from a friend to pay the overdue rent, but he missed the payment again because his client delayed the payment for his writing job. The landlord gave him an eviction notice. He asked my aunt if they could stay with her for a few months, but my grandparents refused. Ron didn't know the truth, that the house wasn't my aunt's. They lied, saying it was my aunt's house and that my grandparents lived there when, in reality, it was the other way around. They're a group of liars. Ron also mentioned that Lucia lied about her education and job. She claimed to be a restaurant manager and exaggerated her salary. This made Ron think they could still follow through with our business plan together. It surprises me how he couldn't see the lack of intelligence in Lucia during their dates. Did they really talk? Or was it just a casual encounter? He mentioned that he was giving up on his writing dreams and looking for work in his previous field. I ignored his first email, but a few days later he sent another. One apologizing. He expressed regret for betraying me and admitted that his life had gone downhill. He mentioned how my aunt had manipulated Lucia into seducing him. It seems that beauty has an advantage. Even the brightest minds can fall for it. But I'm not interested in forgiving Ron or reconciling with him. Now he's regretful, but once a cheater, always a cheater. His life could be a mess partly because I liquidated the trust fund, but I don't regret it. I was fair to myself. He made a choice, and now he has to live with it. I replied to his email telling him never to contact me again and blocked him. I thought about warning him that my aunt would probably abandon him and Lucia once she found a better paying job. But why should I console him? He shattered my soul by cheating on me with my cousin. His misery is just gossip to me now. I discussed everything with my mom, and we had a good laugh. She said she's satisfied that karma has caught up with them all. Update 4. Well, life is good, at least much better than when I started writing here. It's been 2 years since everything exploded, and there's a huge difference between my life and the rest of theirs. I'm not sure where to begin because this is a bit long, but I'll try to keep it short without leaving out important details. First, about me. Not because I'm egocentric, but just to give an update for those who asked. I still have my job, everything is going great, and I even met a guy here and we're dating now. As for Ron, he's got a job, but according to some friends, he's very miserable. He keeps complaining about losing his dream job and now working in something he doesn't like, blaming it all on me. The witch. I could be offended, but honestly, I'm glad things turned out this way. Remember, I'm not a good person. Also, it's not like he couldn't have worked for a while, saved some money, and then tried again. Or worked nights doing what he wants while keeping a day job to support himself. But he doesn't seem that committed to his so-called dream job because he's not willing to put in the effort. As for my aunt and cousin, the best thing happened. My grandparents kicked them out. They got tired of all the drama and having them live with them, so they told them to leave. Now, they're both renting a place together because they don't have any other options. They're a bit useless, the both of them. If I were them, I'd start looking for a new boyfriend quickly. It's not like Lucia is going to get younger or prettier with time, and we all know intelligence isn't something that's going to improve in her case. Yes, I know I'm being very harsh, but that's karma for you. Well, this wasn't as long as I thought it would be, but at least I think I've shared the most important details.